everybody, this is Dianne, one half of the Real Housewives of Alaska, and this is fair warning. This is going to be an explicit episode. Vagina, 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 vagina.
Kuma!
Right?
This is Marnell, and yes, we actually, if our podcast would load to iTunes, it would have the explicit warning.
Right.
We try not to swear, and I don't think vagina is a bad word, but definitely some adult content. So
yes, I agree.
Yeah, listener advisement.
So we tonight are talking about the movie City of Joy, not to be confused with the one that Patrick Swayze made in the early 90s.
No, this is the 2016 documentary City of Joy.
Correct. Although I have to say, I need to go back and watch the Patrick Swayze one. I never did. And it's he plays a doctor in Calcutta. So, I mean, it looked good when it came out. I just didn't watch it. It'll go on low on the list somewhere.
Yeah, I don't think it'll ever swim to the top of my list unless it's like, yeah, no.
Anyway, so yes, this movie was, it actually premiered at a documentary film fest called Doc NYC Film Fest in 2016, and then it was released on Netflix on 2018. And I didn't really find anything, again, in terms of numbers, like how many people had watched it or how much it cost to make it. I think that's probably something we're going to run into again and again, talking about documentaries. Right. I did find a little bit about the woman who wrote it. So she actually wrote and directed it. Her name is Madeline Gavin. And her only writer credit is City of Joy, but she's actually got 3 director credits. So there's one that's still listed as filming, and it looks like she started on it in 2018. It's called The Girl with 7 Names, and it's about a woman who defects from North Korea.
Oh, wow.
And it's listed as a documentary.
Okay, I was thinking it was like dissociative identity disorder or something.
Yeah, no, I actually looked it up because after really loving City of Joy, I felt like I was interested in this woman's work more. And then the other documentary is City of Joy, obviously. And then the very first documentary that she did is a documentary called What I Want My Words to Do to You. And then the subtitle is Voices from the Inside of a Women's Maximum Security Prison. But here's the interesting thing. So the description of it on IMDb is a look at Eve Ensler's writing workshop inside the Bedford Hills Correctional Facility for Women. So she worked with Eve Ensler early on, and then now has revisited work with Eve Ensler again as a result of this documentary.
Well, I mean, she is a very interesting person.
Oh, Eve Ensler?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I had a book by her. I wish I could remember the book. I'll have to look for it. It was actually on my bookcase when the house burned down. And it was great. It was a wonderful book. And then I actually finally, and I should probably be saving this for another time in the podcast, but here we are. I actually started watching the Vagina Monologues finally. So I tried to watch it several years ago, probably about the time that I read that book. And I was like, this is just too much. It's too much. And I'm partway through it and I'm really liking it. Although now knowing about Eve Ensler's sexual history and her history of rape and abuse by her father, it makes it harder to watch the Vagina Monologues.
Yeah. I think I actually bought you a book by Eve Ensler because I liked it so much.
So that's probably the book then. Oh my God, you read a book?
I read a book.
You read a book and you sent it to me?
I did. I liked it so much. It's called I Am an Emotional Creature.
Yes!
The Secret Life of Girls Around the World.
Yes, that was a wonderful book, and that's exactly it. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
I had completely forgotten that came from you because, of course, my house burned down and I had a head injury.
Right. You're forgiven. But yes, it's a collection of, I want to say poems, but they're not like rhymey poems. They're kind of like short stories about from girls around the world. And it's not just like all sex and vaginas. It's, I mean, what a girl's room looks like in Botswana, you know, like just what teenage girls are like in different countries.
I'm going to totally have to look for that book again because it was such a great book.
I think she did a TED talk about it, which is where I found it, because I just have this like visual of Eve Ensler yelling out, "I am an emotional creature." So I think that's where I heard about it, was a TED talk.
She's a pretty amazing human.
She is. She is. I have not read. That's probably the only book I've read by her. I know about the Vagina Monologues.
I thought you were going to say it's probably the only book I've read.
Not quite.
Okay, it's $7.99 as a Kindle book, so people get it.
Yeah.
Get it now.
You could probably find it at a local used bookstore. Thriftbooks.com has it.
Yeah.
If you prefer paper.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to get away from paper. Every now and then I'll get something in paper, but I'm trying to get away from paper. All right, so that's my info about the writer and director. I'm sorry, I totally didn't rate it, and neither did you. So, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
I will go first because I think I rated it a little lower than you.
You probably did.
I liked it a lot, but it's just with such difficult subject matter, it's very hard for me to be like, 5 stars, 10 out of 10. Like it's such an emotional trip, and it's not all bad. That's the thing. I gave it a 4.3.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's a 5 for me. And it's a 5 for me because there is so much about this story, as painful as it is, that is incredibly inspirational.
So two things, and I'm a terrible person.
Would completely recommend.
I really hate subtitles, and that's just the uncultured American in me. First world problems. I have to actually pay attention and read the screen. I can't, So I had difficulty with it because of that, but also I actually wish that it were longer. It was 76 minutes long. 74 minutes is actually what Wiki says. And I found myself wanting to know more of everybody's story. They gave kind of a little blip at the end. I'm especially interested, of course, in Jane.
Yes.
But yeah. I wanted more. I wanted to know so many different things that we will get into in our bycatch. But I actually, for some reason, I was thinking it was an hour and a half, but it was only 74 minutes long. And I'm just like, even so, it's such difficult subject matter. It's so interesting and so awful. And I want to, because this war broke out in 96. I was 16,
And it's still going.
Why are we not hearing about this on the news every night?
I think
6 million people dead.
I think Eve Ensler and Christine Schuler de Schryver are completely right. It's because we don't even think of the Congolese people as people.
No, yeah,
they're black. They live in Africa. They're half a world away.
Yep.
And most of the victims of this war are women and children.
And they're poor.
Yep.
Yep. Like she said, Bosnia happened in the middle of Europe. Therefore,
right.
It was far more important and easily quashed.
And they looked like us.
Mm-hmm.
Not that, America is multicultural. People get over it. Everybody looks like us, But right. Yeah, yeah. I posted a bunch of stuff on the Real Housewives page. I posted a link to the interview that I mentioned that I was watching with Eve Ensler and Christine Schuler de Schryver. I posted an article that Eve Ensler wrote after the first time she came back from the Congo. And she said that in 10 years of working with women who had experienced sexual violence, she had never seen anything as horrific as what she saw when she was in the Congo.
I like what Christine said, that she doesn't even call it sexual violence anymore.
Right.
It's sexual terrorism.
Right. I agree.
Yeah.
I posted a whole bunch of stuff. I was a little disappointed. It doesn't look like City of Joy has kept their website like super current. But there is still opportunity to donate to City of Joy and help them that way if people are thusly motivated. I am really going off track here already. So I did post that link as well. Yeah, amazing. Just for me, it was absolutely a 5, and it was because it was so powerful in so many ways. I, like you, would like more of the story, but I would actually like now for them to go back to do an update.
Yeah.
To let us know maybe how some of the women that we saw in the first documentary are doing, but also to look at how they've grown. When I was reading about the hospital at Ponzi, they said that initially they had like 355 beds, and I'm guessing they have far more beds than that now. Dr. Mukegwe has trained 4 other physicians to do what he does. But when I looked at the website for the hospital at Ponzi, I think we decided it was Ponzi, right?
Yeah.
Which is in French, by the way. I didn't post it because it was in French, but I still read a little bit of French. They have multiple specialty services, not just OBGYN services. So it was, yeah, I agree. I would like more of the story.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I completely derailed us, but can we talk about our heroes now?
I think so.
So we decided to do a little bit of a departure because there are so many heroes in this story. So do you want to go first or you want me to go first?
How about, do you have more than one?
I actually highlighted all 3 women who really stuck in my brain. So Christine.
Okay, how about we take Dr. Denis Mukegwe first?
Okay. I think it's Mukegwe, but
Mukegwe?
I'm going to completely slaughter these names and pretend that I actually know how to pronounce them. So, you know,
yeah,
just being honest.
Yeah. And they didn't actually, because I kept listening for how they say it, because of course you read the captions, and they weren't actually, saying his name whole. I think I heard it like maybe twice. But he is the 3rd of 9 children born to a Pentecostal minister and his wife. He almost died at birth due to infection, but was saved by a Swedish Pentecostal missionary and midwife. He studied medicine, and he wanted to heal the sick people for whom his father prayed after seeing complications of childbirth experienced by women in the Congo who had no access to specialty care.
It was very interesting, and I'm going to interrupt for just a second because I read an interview with him, and he said to his father something like, why can't you heal them completely, or something like that? And his father said, I'm not a doctor. I can't give them a pill. And so his response, not to his dad, but kind of to that whole story, was prayer is powerful, but we also have to take things into our own hands.
Yeah.
That, prayer is not the only thing. Prayer is an empty thing without works, basically.
That was one of the things that I very much appreciated about this. They showed them praying once, and it was before some sort of
it was like
gathering.
I think it was at the beginning of their day, because it sounds like they opened their days at the hospital like that.
But it wasn't like overbearing at all. Like wasn't pushy like missionary stuff usually is,
like some of the missionaries we know.
Yeah, we're related to them, by the way.
Yeah.
So at age 13, Mukegwe took the decision to follow his father's footsteps to become a Pentecostal minister, which he said was a transformative experience for him. He actually started speaking in tongues. So
don't make me love him less.
I know. But apart from working as a doctor, he partly ministers at the Pentecostal church in Bukavu.
Oh, okay. So I didn't know that he was a minister as well as a physician.
Yeah. So they have 700 members. Now, if you remember in the movie, Bukavu went, I'm saying that right?
I think so.
They went from 50,000 people to 1 million people. So 700 seems like a very small church. So they
especially with someone as well known as Dr. Mukegwe.
Right.
I mean, remember the crowds in the street when they welcomed him back.
Right. I mean, basically 2 miles, a 2-mile line of people.
Yeah.
After graduating with a medical degree from the University of Burundi in 1983, he worked as a pediatrician in rural Lemera, which is near Bukavu, which we saw that in the documentary. He started to see patients who, women who had the absence of proper care and suffered pain and genital lesions, and you're gonna correct me on the sayings. I can't say it. Obstetric.
Obstetric, you got it. Obstetric fistulas. So basically, fistulas that happened as a result of childbirth, not fistulas that happened as a result of rape, like the things that we see later in the documentary.
Right, and so if fistulas are let go, they can cause incontinence, which they don't have a proper sanitation in a lot of the villages to deal with, having an issue like that. A lot of places still have menstrual huts where women go, and it's because of they don't have a lot of proper hygiene.
Well, and they still have menstrual huts because they still think women who menstruate are unclean.
I actually saw a documentary about women who suffered fistulas, and they were basically cast out of their communities because of the smell. Because
they smell terrible. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, anything that smells terrible is usually something bad for your health. And so, I mean, it's just something that's sort of always been done in societies around the world is, cast the lepers out.
Sorry, I'm getting really angry already.
Well, on September 24, 2015, he earned his PhD from the Université Libre de Bruxelles.
Oh, no clue.
For his thesis on traumatic fistulas in eastern region of the Democratic Republic of Congo. So after that, he went on to, along with an Iraqi Yazidi human rights activist, Nadia Murad, they were jointly awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for their effort to end the use of sexual violence as a weapon of war in armed conflict in 2018. So not only did he was one of the co-founders of the City of Joy, but he also actually has the Dr. Denis Mukegwe Foundation that you can also give money to.
Oh, cool.
So 100% of your money helps survivors of wartime sexual violence. And you can find that at mukwegefoundation.org.
So I have a question for you, and maybe you have this information. I just haven't given you a chance to get to it yet. But he left the Congo very briefly in 2012 after his family was kidnapped and the person who was protecting him was killed. Did his family come back to the Congo with him? Because I kind of got the impression that they did not.
I don't think that they did, no. So they left. He and his family left in September of 2012. And he returned in January of 2013. So he was gone for about 4 months. I got the impression after that because of one of the things that Christine says, that it's very sad that he basically goes from his office to his residence in the City of Joy. He doesn't go anywhere else outside. And he's, I think one of the things that I saw is he has 7 bodyguards if he does have to leave the city, that keep him safe at all times. So yeah, I don't think he brought his family back to that. So I don't know if maybe he
leaves every now and then and visits.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope that I don't know. I mean, maybe he doesn't have a relationship with his wife anymore because he's married to his work. I don't know. That's heartbreaking to me. It's also, what an incredible human.
Right? Yeah. We will totally talk about what an incredible human being he is. But
yeah.
You have a couple of other people that we want to highlight.
And I don't have nearly as much information about them, but I mean, I really do want to say that all 3 of these women, in her own way, was heroic to me. So Christine Schuler de Schryver has lived in Bukavu all of her life, and we learn in the documentary that she is the child of
the grandchild of colonials.
Right. That her dad was the son of these colonials who had a big coffee and tea plantation, and that her mom was an illiterate worker who was a coffee and tea trimmer on the plantation. And I can't imagine the pain that she must have had to negotiate, and probably to a certain degree continues to negotiate in her life, kind of walking that balance between both sides of her heritage.
Right.
You know, because as she says in the documentary, that her father was basically disinherited and kicked out of the main house, and, you know, he
lived with the workers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it looks like she has several other siblings. I mean, they didn't really talk about it in the documentary, but they showed that family picture of her, and it looks like she had several siblings.
Well, and, you know, it seemed to me that she kind of had more means. I mean, she had a car, she had, I noticed a lot of jewelry and, you know, a nice handbag and things like that.
Right.
And she mentioned having friends in like Berlin and Switzerland and things like that. And she couldn't imagine living anyplace else but Bukavu. I'm not going to keep saying it right. So I kind of get the impression that maybe her siblings like spread out around the world.
And I think she's done some traveling, and the little bit that I did read about her, it sounds like she worked as a teacher for a while. It sounds like she was a human rights advocate, like an outreach worker. So I think she's definitely done work outside of the Congo, but it's her home.
Yeah.
Of course, Jane was my other hero, and I couldn't find very much information about her. And actually, the last name that's associated with her, I found like several different spellings of it. So I want to say on the IMDb, they have her listed as Jane Mukegwe.
Yep.
I'm going to totally slaughter it. Anyway, and so she was a graduate of the first class of women from the City of Joy. She's heavily featured in the documentary. I'm sure we're going to talk about her and her story. She's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw somewhere, but I wasn't able to find where I saw it, that she actually is now a social worker.
Yeah, so at the very end of
they did say it at the end of the documentary.
Yeah,
okay.
They did. So she became a social worker and is actually, they called her the leader of City of Joy.
Yeah. So, I mean, so she went from being an illiterate peasant woman who had what sounds like probably one of the worst injuries that Dr. Mukegwe has seen.
Yeah.
Although he did, in the article that I posted that Eve Ensler wrote, one of the injuries that they describe sounds worse, actually. Anyway, she went from that history to being literate, being a social worker, and now doing tremendous work at the City of Joy.
Well, and you know, she was there since before the beginning. I mean, we start her story in 2007.
And she said she was in the hospital for seven years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it was 2011 when they started building the city. So yeah, I mean, I thought it was interesting that it's kind of a 6-month program. They expect the women and the girls to come in and then to move on after they receive care and training and
it sounds like the
things.
plan is to transition them out of the hospital into the City of Joy and then back out to their communities or back out to some sort of work, some sort of some sort of leadership role.
But I kind of see probably a lot of them wanting to stay on and continue the work, not because they're still afraid of going out, but because of what was done for them, they want to do for others, and kind of being attached to the city.
Yeah, and because it's their family.
Yeah. Yeah, Jane calls them her sisters.
I've got to tell you, I cried a little bit the first time I watched this movie. I cried so hard today.
I didn't cry.
It's because you're cold and dead inside.
I am cold and dead inside. But I had like that just that drop in your stomach, that tense, and yeah.
And so then my third hero, of course, is Eve Ensler. And I've already talked about her and her personal history and starting to watch the Vagina Monologues. You mentioned that great book. Thank you so much for sending that to me and for remembering the title and for remembering the book. I just had it delivered to my Kindle.
So it made that big of an impression on me.
Yeah, which is pretty impressive because I know you're not a book person and I'm not picking on you. It's just not your thing.
Nope.
The thing that I will say about Eve Ensler, and I think maybe she mentioned it in the book, so she's I don't know if she founded it or if she's just heavily promoted it, but there's a global V-Day, which is Valentine's Day every year.
Mm-hmm.
I did post a link to like the V-Day Foundation, and that article that I posted that she wrote right after she was in Bukavu the first time, she actually wrote the most beautiful thing. She was writing about Dr. Mukegwe, and she said, "One good man can create more."
Yeah. Wow. So on the cityofjoys.org's webpage, under Meet the People of City of Joy, Jane is listed as program staff, and it also says that she is a survivor who was instrumental in envisioning V-Day's City of Joy project in Bukavu. So
I don't think they've updated it because I think that the information that she has become a social worker, that's current as of 2016 at least, and maybe that was an update that they tagged onto things at the end of the film when they listed it on Netflix.
Well, and I can imagine they don't keep things. They probably keep a lot of things close to the chest because of the threats that they receive.
Well, and they certainly have higher priorities than their website. Let's be honest.
Right.
But I did think, looking at the website, that it was really cool that they listed the cook and the driver, and I thought that was really, really neat. That it's an acknowledgement that it's not just Dr. Mukegwe. It's not just Christine. They didn't even list Eve Ensler. I mean, it was an acknowledgement that it really does take a whole city of people to make the City of Joy function.
Right.
So unless you have more about heroes, that does kind of take me into Housewives Weekly, which I have a fair amount of stuff. Some of it I've already said, so I'm just going to kind of run through a little bit.
By all means.
Okay, so as I've said, you can donate to the City of Joy, and I did put a link up on the Real Housewives of Alaska Facebook page. So if you've not liked our Facebook page, please do so. The next thing I wanted to mention, and I don't know if I mentioned this to you yesterday, but Todd actually sent me or shared information with me about a documentary called Totally Under Control. Did I share that with you at all?
You didn't.
So it's streaming free until Election Day. So you can find a link on our Real Housewives page. It is a book about the pandemic, or a documentary about the pandemic, and specifically about America's mishandling of our response to the pandemic. And they interview people who are epidemiologists, who are emergency room physicians, who are virologists, who...
Okay. So it's on Prime and Hulu, Vudu, Fandango, Google Play. I think because I started watching something on Amazon Prime, I have seen something on this. Yeah.
Well, if you have to pay on Amazon, this weekend it's free.
Okay.
Because the maker wanted it to be seen by as many people as they could get to see it before the election. The thing that I will say about it is, obviously, it's coming from my perspective, and I think your perspective on the pandemic, which is that we've bungled our response.
Yeah.
The other thing I will say is that I really feel like the people who are featured in this documentary have everything to lose and nothing to gain by speaking the truth.
You mean they don't gain $2,000 a patient?
Right. Yeah, isn't that funny? I mean, I don't get a bonus when I report a COVID patient.
Well, I'm still waiting for my check from George.
I know, me too. That bastard. Anyway, so I highly recommend Totally Under Control. I watched that last night. It was very good. I do have some good news about our rabble-rousers at the Satanic Temple. They have not let us down. So they have filed a motion to disqualify Amy Coney Barrett from ruling on their abortion case that is in front of the Supreme Court. And they have specifically asked that she be disqualified from ruling because of 3 factors: her public hostility to abortion, her publicly expressed religious belief that life begins at conception, and her public statements that Roe was, quote, a barbaric decision that cost us millions of lives.
Bless them. Ironically.
Ave Satanas. I also have a little bit of news about the Satanic Temple San Antonio. They currently have a clothing drive going on called Cozy for Baphomet. And they are asking for warm clothing, hand sanitizer, and personal hygiene products. And if you actually Google Satanic Temple San Antonio, there's several different places that you can do drop-offs if you're in the area. They also have an Amazon list, so you can donate via Amazon.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah. Let's see. So I did look up a couple of things just to see if there was any news about the social dilemma, because we talked about that last week. And I had never heard of this platform, and I'm assuming that it's parler. I'm assuming it's supposed to be pronounced the way you... So parler is French for to speak. And it's Parler. So I'm assuming that is what the platform is named after. I looked at the platform and I didn't sign up for it. The description is that you can speak freely without being censored and without being, quote, deplatformed. And so the reason that I looked it up is that Fox News, interviewed the CEO, who is a guy named John Matze, Matze. And he basically was like, yeah, The Social Dilemma was a really important movie, but it just got derailed by all those leftist solutions where they were asking for big government. Yeah, so while he felt like there were some important things that were raised in terms of potential problems in social media, yeah, he's a good libertarian who thinks that us leftists completely are wrong when we're asking for regulation of social media.
Because, regulation doesn't help anything about, destabilizing a country who is mineral rich and having a 24-year war because of it.
Right.
Yeah. I have feelings.
Yeah, I have some feelings too.
Yeah.
In fact, so this is not a news item. There's one more news item about the social dilemma, but I'm going to go into this because it's something that I was looking up before you and I got online tonight. So there was a threat by the Trump administration back in 2017, 2018 to basically completely deregulate conflict minerals. And there was tremendous fear from, and this is part of that interview that I shared with Eve Ensler and Deschuler Schryver. There was tremendous fear that basically we were going to see an uptick in sexual violence in the Congo because of the deregulation of conflict minerals. And I could not find, so Trump had actually drafted an executive order for the deregulation, and I could not find where it had actually been signed. So I think maybe it had not, that it ultimately did not take place. But that was one of the things that was being threatened back in the early Trump administration.
Ugh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, deregulate. Sure, that sounds like a fantastic idea.
Right? And like I said, I have feelings about that we will get into.
Okay, so the only other thing I had in Housewives Weekly was that Facebook actually posted a response to the social dilemma, and they dismissed it as a conspiracy documentary.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, so you will let dangerous, malicious, threatening violence be on your platform, but Dianne can't post the C word.
Right. Yeah. Marnell is referring to, so I am a member of a group called the Crones of Anarchy, which is a private Facebook group. You have to apply for admission. There's something like 15,000 people in this group. And it's mostly leftist women. It's mostly politics, divorce, relationships, some health stuff. I mean, there's lots of conversation. And a woman posted today, and I think since we're going to label this explicit, I'll go ahead and say it, that her brother-in-law sent out an email to the family about the election, calling his own mother and her, the original poster, a cunt because of the way that they were choosing to vote. And so my response was, you tell him that cunts are powerful, and one flick to the testes, and he's going to be on the floor crying. Well, I got called out and told that I had to basically, like, you know, put an ampersand or something like that in the word and make it not actually the word, because I could be A, sent to Facebook jail, and B, cause the entire thread of conversation to be taken down. And I was like, seriously, so Facebook can completely manipulate an entire election, but I can't use a word that's a slang word that's commonly used to describe female genitalia all over the planet? Okay. I'm editing this, but I'm editing this under protest.
Only because you don't want to be sent back to Facebook jail, because I don't know. Is there a 3 strikes rule?
I think there is a 3 strikes rule, and I've had 2 strikes this year, so I didn't want to get sent back to Facebook jail, and more importantly, I didn't want to be the reason that thread got taken down, because there was some good discussion happening on the thread, so I didn't want to be the person where they were like, well, that Dianne, it's all her fault the thread got taken down, you know.
Oh, because there's a few old crones who would do that.
You know, and there are some of the crones are not my people.
No.
A fair number of them are, but some of those crones are not my people.
Like, they have the same political views as us. They have a lot of the same life views, but they're very judgy.
Yes. Yeah, some of the crones, not a fan. 0 stars, very bad. Do not recommend. All right, so that kind of slides us right into housekeeping. I did want to say R.I.P. Sean Connery.
Yeah, but, okay, so
there's tons of conflict about Sean Connery.
He was 90, he lived an amazing life, and he passed away peacefully in his sleep. Like, I'm okay with it.
Okay, here's some... I mean, I don't know if you read some of the stuff that was posted, and I remember this stuff in the 80s.
Oh, I remember.
Where he was talking about, you know, you just need to give a woman a good slapping or a good smacking around, or, you know, and Sean Connery was not a saint.
Mm-mm.
But Sean Connery gave us some great films. So I don't
did.
know. You know, do I have more space in my heart for him than Kevin Spacey? Yes, I do.
Right. Well, okay, so Sean Connery was from a different era than Kevin Spacey, I think.
You know, I will give you that. Although I would point out that men like Denis Mukegwe, who was born in 1955, I mean, he's not exactly a young man, and he has he has worked for 37 years as a physician as of this year. He has spent his life healing women.
Yeah.
And he has spent his life fighting for women who have been through the most brutal things. So, yeah, I have more space in my heart for Sean Connery than I do Kevin Spacey, but I still recognize he's a flawed human being. We're all flawed human beings, you know.
Yeah, we're not judgy. Too much.
Too much. I will say, so, of course, probably my favorite movie that he was in was Highlander. But there is a movie called The Man Who Would Be King. I don't know if you've ever watched that. You're younger than I am, so you may have been like, that movie is really old and I'm never watching that.
I think I've heard of it, but no.
It's a movie that he made with Michael Caine, and it was a wonderful movie.
I love Michael Caine.
It's a great movie. And then there was a movie that somebody recommended to me called The Wind and the Lion, which I've never seen, so I'll probably go back and watch that. And of course, he was Indy's dad.
I was going to say he'll always be Dr. Jones to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, The Last Crusade is my favorite of the Indiana Jones.
I have to say I agree with you. That's my favorite one, too.
Because they battled Nazis. Who doesn't love a good Nazi punch?
Right? Who would have thought that would be pertinent in 2020? Another thing that I want to say, speaking of battling Nazis, and this is our leftist podcast, so I can say whatever the hell I want. Huge early vote turnout. America, I'm very proud of you. Texas, I am especially looking at you. More people have voted in Texas, early voted in Texas, than in the entire 2016 election.
And that was by Friday. Like, I don't even know what the numbers are today. Like, it's just so impressive that I don't think it can get more impressive.
And Nate Silver, God please let him be right, says that Trump has a 10 out of 100 chance of winning the election. Biden has an 89 out of 100 chance of winning the election.
Does Joe Jorgensen get the other 1%?
I don't know, but you know, I totally have mixed feelings, right? I'm so over all these third party people like screwing everything up.
Mm-hmm.
But I also really genuinely believe that in America, we need to get beyond the two-party system.
Absolutely.
So I really struggle with it. But this year is not the year to vote third party.
Last time it wasn't the time to vote
right?
third party. Like,
I mean, the thing that I will say in Alaska, in fairness to a couple of my friends who are jagoffs who I know are going to vote third party or not vote at all, is that we have 3 electoral votes and they're all going to Donald Trump.
yeah.
They just are because Alaska is ridiculous.
They usually call the election before our polls even close,
Right.
let alone until we start counting.
Although this year that's probably not going to be the case.
That's right. Yeah, totally correct.
But, you know, whatever. Good job, America. Tons of early votes. I am so proud of us. And let's just survive the next several months until whatever happens in January. Whatever happens January 20th, let's just survive.
Yep.
The only other thing I wanted to say was Happy Halloween, which was yesterday, and we were supposed to podcast yesterday, and it didn't happen because somebody worked all day, not me. I had my tattoo finished yesterday. Yeah, it was 11 degrees like 3 days ago here. So it's a typical Alaskan Halloween.
Yeah. So when I was a kid, you could literally set your calendar by the first snowfall, and it was Halloween. We're one of those states where when you're a kid and you dress up for Halloween, like you have to put your freaking snow coat on over your costume, and it sucks. but for probably the last 20 years, it hasn't snowed until after Thanksgiving. And we got about 2 to 3 inches of snow today. So not quite on Halloween, but we're
close.
Yeah, we are definitely starting winter off early.
Which, by the way, did you see my Halloween horns?
I did. I love them.
Were they not phenomenal?
Those are awesome.
So I'm really hoping next year, now that I've got them, that I can go like full meal deal, black lipstick, black cloak. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it up. I don't go to work in costume anymore because I had a really bad experience in the emergency room one year. Because I was dressed up and yeah, it was bad. We had a code.
Okay. I was going to say, we should probably save that story for the people who last till the end of the podcast.
Right. But anyway, yeah, I don't dress up anymore at work, but I certainly could just dress up for Halloween, even if I'm alone in my little 2-room, 3-room house.
So I always try to do something. The last time I think I seriously dressed up at work was I was a butterfly, and I walked into a semi-serious meeting, and I was the only one in costume.
Oh,
so
no!
I was like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that again. So the next year, I actually just ordered a red T-shirt with a Star Trek insignia on it, and so, haha, I was a red shirt. So, and luckily Halloween fell on a Friday, and I wore, jeans and a red T-shirt, and, nobody really questioned the insignia on, those who knew got it, but those who didn't, I didn't have to explain my costume. So yeah, I don't really dress up for work anymore. I did actually buy 5 different funny hats and headbands for Zoom meetings for last week, but last week was kind of a craptastic show, so I didn't get a chance to do any of that. So yeah.
It was a craptastic week for me too. I totally get it.
Yep. 2020.
Yep. All right. Anything else you want to say in Housewives Housekeeping?
This is from way a while ago, and I can't remember when we talked about it. But you said biopic, and I corrected you to biopic. I have always heard it said biopic, and it is biopic. So you were right, and I was wrong.
I totally don't even remember that.
I was watching something today where they said it, and I was like, oh, I keep forgetting that I need to housekeep that.
I've heard both, so I'm gonna give you a pass. I may not have given you a pass when you said it originally, but I'm gonna give you a pass.
Biopic sounds like it's more true to what it's describing, but right. I don't know. Maybe I'm just myopic in my biopic. But that's all I had.
I'm sure I have way more, but it's been an exhausting week.
It has.
As John Lovett would say, what a week.
Let's get into it.
All right, so that leads us to summer, winter, and road construction.
Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first? I cannot remember who went first last time.
Oh, I'll go first.
Go right ahead.
So my summer was dance more.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, there was so much joy demonstrated by these women who have been so brutalized, and so many of the scenes where they're dancing, I was like, man, I gotta dance more. I'm good. This is kind of embarrassing. I shouldn't say this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. So I keep getting these ads for this thing on Facebook called Body Groove, which is like a home workout that's dancing.
And now everyone listening will get those ads too.
Right? Completely. I ordered it. The DVDs, there was like $100 worth of DVDs on sale for $30, and I was like, you know what? If that means that I dance a little bit more and I feel a little more joy, I'm willing to spend the $30 and give it a try, because those women were so joyful in spite of everything they've experienced.
Yeah.
And the thing that really hit me was when Dr. Mukegwe was talking about how he like wasn't sleeping and was really distressed.
Had a breakdown.
Yeah, I mean he was having vicarious trauma.
Yeah.
Basically, he had a breakdown because of vicarious trauma. He wasn't the person who was being sexually brutalized, but I mean, I think he's estimated that he had taken care of like 40,000 women.
40,000 women. Yep. And I mean, not just women. There was an infant.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
and I'm sure that there have been multiple
vicarious trauma. I think that that's your own. I mean, you were experiencing that. Well, he's not being physically violated, right. But
so the definition of vicarious trauma is that you are traumatized by seeing other people's trauma.
Okay.
So anyway, yeah, he had a total breakdown, and then like he had a dance with the women. There was like a challenge to them to dance, and
Enzler asked them about the dancing they did in the individual villages and communities.
Okay, and then he said that like after that night, after that dance, he was able to sleep. He just had this profound sense of peace and purpose, and realized that if these women could still have that level of joy and fierceness, that he could fight for them.
Yeah.
So my summer was...
I just got goosebumps.
Yeah. My summer was dance more.
That's a good message.
And I also am going to dig out some of my old belly dance DVDs and maybe do a little bit of that too, just to get my old body moving again.
Oh... Yeah, so, I have the rhythm of a frog on a hot plate.
So. Well, according to the woman who sells Body Groove, and I don't know, I'll let you know, we'll see. You don't have to have any rhythm. You just have to move. So we'll see. I'll let you know.
Yeah, you'll have to keep me updated on that one.
I'll do an update in Housewives Housekeeping at some point.
Okay.
So what was your summer?
So my summer was that the City of Joy and Dr. Mukegwe doesn't just treat the physical body. He heals women's spirits.
I agree.
And their minds.
I agree completely. Yeah, I mean, several of the women talk about having completely lost their minds.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, he doesn't just, fix the broken part of their body. He mends their spirits. And like I was saying earlier, it's not overtly religious. It's and when I say spirit, I mean, that light inside. I mean,
yes.
We're talking about Jane being sunshine.
Yes, the sunshine. Yes.
And healing their minds too. They teach them self-defense. They teach them self-confidence. They give them a skill, and they send them back to their own communities to. And I'm going to use this word wrong, to preach what they have learned, in that the shame is not on me. We need to start pointing it out that this happens, and the only way to stop it is to talk about it. And you need to listen to me, and you need to listen to women, because one of the driving factors in this documentary as a whole that I noticed is that when you break the women, you break the community.
Right. Yes.
The sexual violence was being used to put the villages in chaos and to make everyone flee the area so that it could be mined.
Well, and I thought about it. I mean, I really thought about it. And rape has been a weapon of war as long as humans have walked on this planet.
Right.
But I think the scale with which it is being perpetrated in the Congo, I think we've never seen. I think we've never seen something like that.
Right. So
I'm going to tell you, I wrote down 3 things, and 2 of them I actually am going to print on a piece of paper and put up on my wall. So one of them is, and this was not one that I wrote down, but Eve Ensler actually says, when she's talking about saying vagina, 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 mm-hmm. when we tell the truth, we break the silence. Mm-hmm. And then Jane, and I wrote this down, and I'm going to put this on my wall, she said, I'm not afraid anymore. And then another thing that Eve Ensler says was, she takes space. She knows she has the right to exist.
Yeah, I liked that exercise where she was like, take up space.
Yeah.
You have a right to be in this world.
Yes.
So if you go to the cityofjoy.org's website, you can go to the Vagina Warrior program, and the City of Joy's Revolutionary Vagina Warrior program aims to provide safe, empowering community for survivors of gender violence who have demonstrated leadership qualities. The focus is healing trauma, building self-esteem and skills, and training women leaders. Activities include leadership training on rights, awareness, judiciary, and community activism, specialized in psychological care for survivors, literacy and English, comprehensive sexuality education, computer literacy, on-site farming and agro-pastoral training, knitting, sewing, and beading, media and communication training, self-defense, massage, physical education, culinary arts, soap making, theater, dance, and mindfulness.
That's amazing.
Isn't that?
And by the way, so a man who is the son of a Pentecostal pastor, who himself is a pastor, and I think probably a fairly conservative Christian pastor, the fact that number one, he's working with someone like Eve Ensler. Mm-hmm. Number two, that their group is providing comprehensive sexual health, sexuality training for women.
Mm-hmm.
That's profound. Like, I work in white rural America, and the amount of stuff that women do not know about their bodies and do not know about their sexuality is stunning. And the fact that we've got a man in the Democratic Republic of the Congo teaching women about healthy sexuality is amazing.
Yeah, agreed. So I just loved that, he started off, just mending their wounds, and now he's healing them completely. I mean, if you ever can be healed completely, but he's giving them, he's giving them purpose and meaning. He's giving them a life that they couldn't have even had before that. It's amazing. He's not just training women to be wives and cooks and sewing and knitting and everything. He is training them to be leaders, and I think that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, the work that is being done there is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, giving any woman strength, courage, and purpose is a difficult thing. I don't envy my friends who are raising daughters. I think it is, not having children myself, I think it is actually harder to raise women, because it just is. It's the world we live in. And to take women who have dealt with what these women have dealt with and to raise them up and give them strength, courage, and purpose is just, I mean, like, this is one of those where, like, I want to travel to where they are and meet them and help them,
So I actually was looking at that, and I'll get into this with my road construction, but they actually on their website say that they're fully staffed with volunteers from within the Congo, that they don't need outside volunteers. They need our financial donations.
Yeah.
They don't need clothes. They don't need food. They need us to send money.
Yeah. And I'm not traveling anytime soon. Although COVID-wise, they're probably a little better off than we are.
I don't know. It'd be interesting. I don't know what the numbers are for the Congo and COVID, and if there's even any reporting considering how broken the country is.
Right. So what was your winter? What was your bad?
My winter was the children. And it was really like seeing those poor kids and thinking about how children who have seen that kind of war and violence, that's what they're going to learn to live as adults. And even in some of the pictures of some of the images of the militias that they showed, some of those men were boys.
And there's actually other documentaries that sort of deal with
like child soldiers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was one of the things that I would have liked to have seen. I would like to know more in depth. I'm actually kind of glad they didn't focus on that too much in the movie and the documentary, because this was really about the city and about the women and about Dr. Mukegwe. So it's something that I'm super interested in, because it's such, I mean, those boys don't choose that, you know, and if they do, it's out of desperation and poverty. So, yeah.
You know, it was so interesting because I looked at them and they looked dead. I mean, we joke about being cold and dead inside, but they looked dead inside.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's really, really true that you cannot survive what they have survived. You can't see what they've seen and still have a respect for other human beings.
Nope. And I mean, honestly, if that was one of the things that's kind of in my bycatch is, one of the things I wanted to know more about was that there are men in the City of Joy. They were drivers.
Yes.
They were
self-defense instructors.
They were interpreters, you know, and so I wondered how the women felt about that. And two, I kind of wondered how those guys got to where they are and the difference between them and the militia, because I mean, yeah, I'm sure a lot of the boys from the militia were probably kidnapped as children and forced into that, you know, that
right.
lifestyle. I don't want to say lifestyle. It's not a choice. But, you know,
forced into that life
by violence and poverty and, you know, probably becoming an orphan. And, you know, and I've seen things where a lot of the, you know, militia leaders and stuff get them addicted to drugs and things like that. And so it's like Christine said, you know, these boys, they have a gun, they can eat today, right? You know, so it's just, yeah, it's a sick cycle that, you know, the poverty and abuse.
So what was your winter?
Unfortunately, my winter was also the men.
Yeah.
The one girl, and I cannot remember her name, when her father, when she escaped from the militia after 2 weeks. And he turned her
away.
You returned from being raped and you brought this curse here with you. You must leave. Like, that was heartbreaking. And even Dr. Mukegwe said that the guilt falls to the victim. Her husband leaves her, and the total destruction of the family is the total destruction of the community. Right.
And most of the women get left by their families because of their abuse.
If their family isn't killed, they're usually cast out because it's seen as a mark or a curse upon the family.
Like
or
they're failing.
The community. Yes. And so I don't know. There are so many that are like that, and then there's so many who go and work and give their lives for Dr. Mukegwe. You know, that one guy, you know, gave his life so that Dr. Mukegwe could live. And, you know, and then you have guys like Dr. Mukegwe, and it just, there's such polar opposite ends of the spectrum. And because of where I grew up and the privilege that I have and everything, I cannot see how anybody could look at a young girl who was, you know, repeatedly gang raped for 2 weeks and be like, you need to leave.
Well, and honestly, that was why I kind of honed in on that thing that Eve Ensler said, one good man can create more. Mm-hmm. Because as angry as I am in my own life right now, I mean, I'm trying not to be hateful about all men, because You know, one good man can create more. There are Denis Mukweges out there.
Yeah. Yep. And I looked at him and I'm like, he is genuinely an amazing person. Like, he's not doing this for fame. He's not doing this for fortune. He's not doing this, for status in the community.
No, he is truly called.
Yeah.
This is a calling. This is this, and it's beyond like a spiritual calling. It's beyond a professional calling.
He suffered mockery in his profession because of the things that he described of what he saw, and people didn't believe him. And he still continued.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Right into road construction.
Well, so I feel like all three of the documentaries that we've done so far, and I mean, eventually we're going to do something that's not a documentary, I'm sure. But
I love documentaries.
I do too, actually.
For like a couple of years, that's seriously why I had Netflix. Like, before Netflix started putting out their own good content of shows and stuff, like, Netflix was like the go-to for documentaries, and like, it's seriously why I kept Netflix for years. And I had Netflix when they were still sending you DVDs.
I did too. In fact, I got a nasty gram from them the other day about never having sent them the DVDs that burned in our house fire 5 years ago.
Oh my God. Seriously?
Seriously. It was like, do you still have these DVDs and do you want to send them back? All right. Wow. So, for me, my road construction was good. It was about being pushed to some self-reflection. We joked about it, but really it was a shite week. I had a very hard week. I had a horrible interaction with my soon-to-be ex today. I was feeling really bad for myself, especially on Thursday and Friday. I was feeling really low. Like, this is not something that I would admit very often, but like suicidal low.
Yeah.
And then I watched this movie on Friday night for the first time, and I was like, oh my God, this was the right movie at the right time.
Yeah.
Because if these women who have survived so much can have courage and joy, how can I complain about what I'm experiencing?
This is why I always preference my discomfort with first world problems.
And I go a little bit to what Dr. Mukegwe said about there's no comparing here. We don't compare your bad to your bad and say yours was worse than mine. And, your first world problems, my first world problems, they're still painful. They still hurt us. They still diminish us as people. And for you and me, diminish us as women. But how can I complain when I see so much joy in the face of so much tragedy?
Mm-hmm.
So, when I said this was a 5 for me, part of the reason that this was a 5 for me is because it was so profound just in terms of that realization of, wow, I am blessed. I have a lot, and there's so much that I have not suffered, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, it really made me think a lot about my life as a professional and about how, I try to do good work and I try to go above and beyond. There's probably more I could be doing.
There's always more you could be doing, but,
right now I'm not in that place. Someday I hope I'm in the place where I can do some volunteer work, where I can go and travel and volunteer and make more of a difference.
Right.
Because I look at what these people have done with their lives, and they are doing incredible things every day.
Why are there not more people like them in the world?
Right. Right. I think about the girl that they featured at the end of the documentary, where they said that she had finished high school and had gone on to become a nurse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I loved all of the updates. I wish I like you said, I wish we could get an even newer update on them. Yeah.
So, what was your road construction?
So my road construction actually had something to do with ugly. So they thought their vaginas were ugly. Like,
So I'm going to tell you the tragedy of working with women
yes.
around their bodies is that so many women think their vaginas are ugly.
Okay, but we are women in a westernized culture who have been influenced by things like pornography, Playboy, things like that. And I'm not saying that pornography is a bad thing. I'm saying that there is a standard typical look for women, and like anything beyond that is seen as abnormal.
So, but do you think that these women, I mean, I think it's two things. I think they thought their vaginas were ugly because of all the violence they'd experienced. I think there's three things. I think many of them had horrible scarring. I mean, it sounds like Jane basically has nothing but a huge hole in her body now. But I also think that they were raised in a culture where you don't talk about it and it's nasty and sinful.
Is a sin.
Saying kuma is a sin.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I found it very, very interesting that these women who had not been subjected to a
like a standard of beauty,
hyper sexualized, feminized, look, still thought that this, amazing part of their body was ugly. And I didn't even consider that it's, I mean, there was the one girl who was like, I see the burned part, you know. I didn't even consider that, like, it's still a place of violence for them. But, and I just, of course, having never had children, but, our bodies make children, that's pretty amazing. But a lot of these women's experience having children were their rape children.
Right.
And, I just, it saddened me and shocked me all at the same time that these women thought that their vaginas were ugly. And, you and we've talked about how, women, even here in the United States, where we think we have the best education system in the world, don't know the difference between their vulva and their vagina.
They don't know that their urethra is a different hole than their vagina.
Right?
They don't know that they don't pee out of their vagina.
I was shocked to learn that people were shocked to learn that. I went to one of those slumber parties that sells like the sex toys and stuff, and you get wine and there's a bunch of women giggling about dildos and stuff like that. And some of the things that women admitted to not knowing, or not like women who at the time, I think I was in my late 20s, women who were older than me and they had never experienced an orgasm. Yeah. Like I was just, my mind was blown. Like, we are 50% of the population. Why is there not a better system than what we have now? Like, we should know that we don't pee out of our vagina.
It's amazing. It's amazing what women don't know. So, go ahead.
Especially now that we have Google.
So I'm actually, since we're already being explicit, and since I've already said the word once, I'm going to say that I have a book called The Cunt Coloring Book, which is nothing but picture after picture after picture of vulvas that can be colored.
Wow.
It's amazing. I'm also going to recommend for any of our female listeners and for any of our male listeners who love women and who care about vaginas, there is a book called Read My Lips by Debbie Herbenek, who is a sex researcher. And I tell my female patients that this book is your owner's guide to your vulva and your vagina.
And those are two different things.
Right?
Oh man, I just sent you a picture. You'll laugh at it. It looks like a religious symbol, but it's I don't think we can post that to our Facebook site.
Right, because I can't even use the word Kuma on Facebook, so...
I'm going to start using the word Kuma.
I am too, and it probably is some horrible word in the Congo that really we shouldn't be saying at all. But it sounds fabulous.
Like...
Oh my god, I love that. I love what you just sent me.
It sounds like an exotic fruit.
So seriously, for a long time, and I learned this word from my friend Jennifer Baker, who I love, who I will send a link to this podcast to. Probably shouldn't have said her full name on the podcast. Sorry, Jen.
I was going to say, that's probably kind of a common name.
Anyway, she taught me the word yoni, which is a Hindu, or maybe it's Sanskrit, but it's Indian, which is a word for a woman's parts in India. So I've used the word yoni a lot over the years.
I liked vagine.
Yeah, I liked vagine too.
Yeah.
I did very much. And I liked the vagine fabric. I wish I had some vagine fabric. Because I would totally make some masks out of vagine fabric.
Well, it would go with your dick's masks.
Right. Which I have all of these masks cut out. And then when my life fell apart, I stopped sewing. And now I'm kind of like, I'm just swimming from week to week right now.
Well, I don't think
I'm Dory. Just keep swimming, right? Yeah.
I don't think the COVID's going to go away anytime soon.
Yeah,
so
there'll probably be a market for masks for a while.
Yeah, I actually think kind of like maybe forever.
And I say market, and I don't sell my masks. I give them away. So yeah.
So I think we are straight into bycatch.
We are truly in bycatch.
Yeah. So I have to say that I appreciated that there was so much laughter and singing and dancing and joy.
Oh my god, the laughter game looked amazing.
But like, it's not like they threaded in these horror stories from women, and I mean, these were truly awful. We started off with one where, I mean, it wasn't even just the sexual violence. It was they cut the throat of the aunt and then spread her blood all around the home. That is just a terrorism tactic right there. That's horrendous. And so all of these horrible stories were told in amongst showing these women who were growing and learning and healing, and so it wasn't like this sounds like the most downer movie, documentary ever, and it really wasn't. I mean, when I say I didn't cry, I didn't cry, and it's not because I'm cold and dead inside. It's because it really it was uplifting, and it had hope. It has hope. So I really appreciated the way that they structured the documentary.
Yeah, I mean, there were horrible things, but there was tremendous hope.
Yeah.
I totally lost what I was going to say. How embarrassing.
Okay. So, we talked about it before, how the population of Bukavu went from 50,000 people to 1 million because people were fleeing their villages and coming there. And so I kind of could you imagine if all of a sudden you had an explosion of population in your area, like in Juneau? So we didn't experience it this year because all cruise ships were canceled, but we actually get a number of mega ships in, and we get them in at the same time. And so our city of 35,000 can actually get to 1 million people some days in the cruise ship season. And so knowing what that feels like from my calm, relaxing, sleepy little downtown town when I used to actually go into the office, to suddenly like not being able to move on the sidewalks. I could not imagine dealing with that every day. And I'm also kind of a city planning nerd in that I'm like, they do not have the infrastructure to support that. I cannot imagine what, their sanitation, their water, their electricity grid, like.
Well, yeah, and I mean, quite honestly, they probably didn't have the infrastructure to support 50,000 people.
Right,
you
right.
know?
So, I mean, just on a basic level of what are you doing with your waste? How are you getting clean water? It's just, I mean, it's an added thing that, we normally don't have to think about in a first world country, except if you're in Flint, Michigan, who still doesn't have clean water.
Right.
There was something on TikTok the other day where somebody was talking about privilege, and they were trying to educate people on the privileges that they have that they don't know that they have. And I have water privilege. Like, I have clean drinking water that comes from my tap on demand. So
right. Oh my God.
I could not imagine living in a city that originally had 50,000 people in it that now has 1 million people who have fled their villages. And like Christine said, these people chose poverty. These were landowners in their village, and they chose poverty in the city.
That was one of the things that was really profound to me, was that the comment that these people are now starving because they are too terrified to work the land.
Yeah.
That they have a rich land that produces a tremendous amount of food, and that they're terrified to work the land.
Yeah. Terrified to work the land and terrified to go gather the water, because that is actually something that
they need to farm.
Yeah, there are places in the world where that is something that women do all day, every day, is they just go get water and bring it back. Get water and bring it back. And I, to be so terrified that, you can't even cultivate the land or get the water or anything. It just, yeah, it's horrendous. I mean, they pointed out that, the lack of infrastructure goes towards, you don't know if the man who is pointing a gun at you is police or army or militia.
They actually even said, and maybe it was in one of the articles that I read, that some of the UN peacekeepers have been among the rapists.
Yes. There was a huge scandal a couple of years ago. I remember reading about that. I thought it was interesting that a lot of the guards, the men around the City of Joy, actually are wearing like that hyper yellow color of a vest. And I'm sure it probably is something that makes them easily identifiable as, a trusted, person in the City of Joy. So I could not imagine, like, it was Jane who actually was able to, she was freed by the good men, the good soldiers.
Right.
And she actually went home and was unable to sleep or anything. And she was actually recaptured 7 months later.
Right.
And
now, I would love to know more of her story, because first of all, I don't know how on earth she survived after being tied to, survived being tied to a tree for 2 months. All I can assume is that her captors came back and repeatedly raped her and fed her and gave her water so that they could repeatedly rape her.
Yeah.
That's all I can assume.
But the way that I envisioned it is they tied her behind her or at her elbows around the tree. And she said that her arms were swollen from being tied like that. And that, the body of her uncle was actually basically cut down from the tree and dropped on her. And that's how they kind of left her, and she was left for, I think it was days or something before the good soldiers found her. And she was already a month pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And she just went home. Like, I can't imagine having to deal with that by yourself.
And there was no one there. I mean, that was
Yeah.
the other thing, was that her family was all gone.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, oh. And then to be recaptured and to have it, like, even something more horrific happen to her was just heartbreaking.
And the fact that she is their sunshine.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've made it this far with us and you haven't watched this documentary, you have to stop and meet Jane.
Yeah. So one of the most interesting things I think that she said is that, you know, she was very sad all of the time. And, you know, even after living in the hospital for 7 years, she said that she almost killed herself for no reason. She almost killed herself for no reason.
Right.
If anybody had a reason, honey, it would have been you, but I'm really glad you didn't.
Yeah, right.
Like, yeah, she, like, needs to be some sort of UN ambassador or something. Yeah. She would be an interesting person to do a solo documentary on.
So let's talk a little bit about the war.
All right.
So the war actually had its roots in the genocide that happened in Rwanda in 1994. I don't know do you remember that? So you were 13.
Yeah. So didn't they make the movie Hotel Rwanda?
Oh, which was a wonderful movie with Don Cheadle. Yes.
Okay. I actually did not watch that. Like I said, for being cold and inside, I really have a problem with difficult subject matter.
Okay,
in my
Hotel
movies.
Rwanda is totally worth watching. You should completely catapult that to the top of your list.
I'm sure it is, but...
And it's Don Cheadle, who's amazing.
I know. He is my Iron Patriot, by the way.
So I
don't know who the guy was in the first movie.
I actually remember. I was 23, so I remember when it happened, and I remember watching hundreds of thousands of bodies wash down the river. I remember seeing pictures of the genocide. And so apparently, so the Hutus attacked the Tutsis. There were 800,000 Tutsis who were killed. The Hutus apparently like spilled over the border and started to create conflict in the Congo as well. But then the other thing that I read was that the war actually started as a civil war in 1996 to overthrow a dictator. So I think it's kind of blurred. I mean, it sounds like the violence really started with the Rwandan genocide back in 1994, but then it became a full-blown civil war in 1996. What's really interesting, though, and I mean, they said it in the movie, I read it in repeated articles, it really is a proxy war for land. So at this point, countries, including the United States, including a ton of European countries, including Middle Eastern countries.
Canada.
Yeah. You know, we are
nice
all...
little old Canada.
Right? We are all funding different militias to, quote, keep the peace or whatever. And what they're actually doing is destroying communities, raping women and children, and clearing the land so these mega corporations can go in and get mineral rights to things like gold and diamonds and tungsten. And then there was a mineral that I'd never heard of, but it's apparently used in our phones, in our computers, called coltan.
So I think it's one of those really rare earth minerals that, I mean, it's even more rare than diamonds, which actually, diamonds aren't that rare. You think they are because it's a well-controlled release of them, but diamonds aren't that rare. But yeah, it's used in a ton of electronics. It's not only used in phones, it's used in computers and LCD screens and our TVs, probably our cars at this point, because our cars are computers.
Right. Yeah, good point.
My robot vacuum probably has
My
it in
robot
there.
vacuum. Yeah.
Your Alexa. Yeah. My podcast microphone probably has something in it that's, you know, a conflict mineral. Yeah. It's one of those things that at this point in society, we just can't live without it.
So I actually went down the rabbit hole of conflict minerals because I was trying to learn more about it. And there are a bunch of different places that you can go to kind of find out which companies are using conflict minerals and which companies are trying to source their minerals better. I found an article at gamesindustry.biz, and actually Apple has a pretty good reputation for sourcing their conflict minerals. They're not great, but they have the best reputation of the big companies. That makes me feel a little better about being addicted to my Apple products. But, you know, there are some companies that are not as great.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's hard. I think that you're right. I mean, we do live in this world where we're really we live in this first world where we are really dependent on our technology. And I think it's hard to find affordable technology and ethically source it and, you know, make sure that they're being responsible about their minerals. I thought it was a very interesting rabbit hole to fall down, and to realize that this country is being devastated for its mineral rights and that these women and children are being destroyed over stuff that comes out of the ground.
Yeah. I don't know if I've told you this, but I've never been married, and that is by choice. But I actually have a diamond in a ring in a safe deposit box. If we ever needed to get married for any sort of like insurance purposes or anything like that, I have a ring.
Or because we're all going to be handmaids.
Right.
I'm kind of laughing, but not really.
My ring was actually grown in a lab. I chose a lab-grown ring over a conflict diamond. My other choice was to get a ring from secondhand, so that basically I wasn't contributing any new money to conflict diamonds. But I actually was aware enough of this at the time the ring was purchased that I knew that I did not want a conflict diamond. I didn't want to have anything to do with that. And I also don't think that diamonds are worth the value that we pay for them. I think it's an inflated industry, and I didn't really want any part of it. So I chose a much more affordable and, yes, real diamond that was grown in a lab.
So here's something that should tell you everything you need to know about my marriage. For the past several years, I had been wearing our grandmother's band, which I did not have at the time of my marriage. And I had actually purchased for myself a diamond ring that I've got a friend who does estate jewelry. And she was like, oh, you should look at this ring. I think you'd really like this ring. And I ended up getting sucked in. It is not, as to the best of my knowledge, it's not a conflict diamond. To the best of my knowledge, and according to my friend who does estate jewelry, it's an antique diamond. I don't think I'd ever own a diamond again.
Yeah.
I've always loved emeralds, and actually, unfortunately, my ex and his family have kind of destroyed emeralds for me. I don't think I'll ever want an emerald again. Which totally breaks my heart. So yeah, I'm not really sure. And peridot, no, any greenstone, I'm kind of done. Yeah.
I'm not big on jewelry anyway, so
I am. So right now I'm kind of going, okay, tanzanite. But I'm sure tanzanite is horrible too, because it originated in Tanzania, and I'm sure that it's horrible too.
right?
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so the whole concept of, number one, you're right, this war that's been going on for 26 years, unstopped by Western democracies, participated in by Western democracies so we can get these conflict minerals, ignored when people like Denis Mukegwe go to the UN and testify about what's going on in his country. It's just, it's profound. It's profound.
Yeah. I mean, it's look at the Middle East and the destabilization of the Middle East for all of the oil. You know, it's same basic concept.
Except we don't see rape on a scale of hundreds of thousands of women and children.
No, I mean, it still
oil.
happens. There still are slave brides that are I want to say sold or given into ISIS. They go in and kind of do the same thing, only they take these women as brides. But yeah.
Which is a nice way of saying I'm brutalizing you, but...
I own you.
Yeah.
Nobody else can own you.
Right. Nobody else can brutalize you, only me.
Yep.
No, we're not getting political at all.
So so now I'm totally going to get political. So one of the things, living in Alaska, we have very, very big opinions about the mining of precious minerals, because we both rely on it and we try and mitigate it. Here in Southeast Alaska, we have two major gold mines, and we're constantly going to court and into legislation about what they can and cannot do with the mining of these minerals, because it has a huge impact on our fish and wildlife. So when you mine, you put really gross chemicals into the environment, and it is very, very hard to keep those chemicals contained when you're mining. And if those chemicals get out, you wind up killing the fishing industry, which is also something that we rely upon in Alaska. So we have one of the most sustainable fisheries in the entire world. We are very, very responsible about how we fish. And so we always kind of have this butting of heads of two of our major industries here in Alaska. And so there's strong opinions on one side and strong opinions on the other. If it is not hunted or fished, it is mined. And so, you know, we rely on both industries, and so it's a balancing act of legislation on both sides and money. Who can throw the most money at the legislator du jour, you know?
Yeah, right.
And so you look at other countries that don't have the regulation that we do, and I can't help but think that they are probably strip mining and putting arsenic into their environment and poisoning their people, their land, their animals, their, you know, any other source of future income. They're basically raping the land. They are going to go in and they are going to take as much of these minerals out of the land as they possibly can. And the minute those mines dry up, the corporations are going to pull out, and the people are going to be in a worse situation than they were before, because now their land is poisoned and their people are poisoned. And I mean, you heard Christina say that, you know, they have some of the most fertile land in the world. You can grow anything. Right now, we have an issue with cutting down the Amazon because we want palm oil or avocados or coffee. You know, you could be growing these things elsewhere and probably making just as much with like less of an impact than what the mining is doing to the land, the irresponsible mining. So those are my big feelings about the mining in this documentary.
Yeah, I mean,
I know I kind of went on a long rant. But
it's all right.
there's a lot to digest.
I thought you were going to say we had strong opinions in Alaska about violence against women, which we do because we have one of the highest rates of violence against women in the United States. I'm just throwing that in there.
And we have one of the highest instances of violence against women of color, because we have an issue with, I want to say, Indigenous women not being believed or being marginalized by the more colonialist part of our society.
Sorry, shouldn't laugh.
Well, I mean, there was just a serial killer that they discovered in Anchorage, and the reason why he was able to kill for so long, that they suspect,
was because they were Native women.
Yep, he was preying on Native women.
Which, by the way, I'm going to get really graphic here, but I'm still angry about this case. So there was a case a couple of years ago, I think you probably know where I'm headed, up here, and the victim was an Alaska Native woman. She was abducted, strangled, and the man who did the abduction and the strangulation, and there is research that shows that strangulation is the most violent assault and the most likely assault to lead to a murder that can happen to a woman.
Yep.
Abducted, strangled, and then masturbated on. The guy got like house arrest and then time off for good behavior.
Yep.
He didn't even serve any time.
Nope.
That's Alaska. That's how valued women are in Alaska.
Yep. And this woman has to live with the fact that he is still out there.
Yep. Oh, that was also something that I read about laws in the Congo, is that these rapists, even if the women report them, can buy their way out of jail and show up and rape the women again.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So a lot of women, because of that, and then because of fear of being rejected by their husbands and their families, don't report their rapes.
God, if you can, there were some women who were so horrifically injured by what was done to them that there's no hiding that, you know? Wow.
So seriously, if you can get through that article that was written by Eve Ensler that I posted without crying, you truly are cold and dead inside. Because there is one case that Dr. Mukegwe tells her about where the woman who was raped was captured with her brother, and the soldiers tried to make her brother rape her, and he refused, and they cut his head off in front of her.
Oh my God. Oh. You know, and speaking of so I lost my train of thought now too, but speaking of like celebrities and everything, I would love for Christine to name names of the celebrities.
Me too. I was like, who showed up? Gwyneth Paltrow and Goop? Who?
Yeah, like who came in and took pictures like they were taking pictures of animals at a zoo?
Yeah.
And then the money that they raised, they never saw a dime of. Like,
yeah.
I want to know who those celebrities were.
And that is completely unsubstantiated. I don't know that it was Gwyneth Paltrow and Goop. I was just being snarky. But yes, I would love to know.
See, and I was thinking of another prominent white woman who has a penchant for adopting children out of Africa. Who
Madonna. Madonna.
Wasn't gonna say it,
but she's got like a direct line to kids in Malawi, so she doesn't need to stop in the Congo. I'm sorry, true. I spoke the quiet part out loud again. I've been doing that a lot lately.
Oh,
I'm looking through my notes. Go ahead.
Yeah. You mentioned it earlier. What I'm going to call him Dr. Dennis from now on, because I've had a full cup of apple cider with spiced rum. Here, no story is worse than no worse and no story is better.
I've got that. I'm actually staring at that right now. I wrote that down.
When that girl said that she felt bad because her story was not as bad as her friend's story.
Right.
Like, to think of what that girl probably suffered, and to have her have that guilt that somebody else suffered worse. So I have nothing to, I just, I love the man. To tell that girl that her suffering is no better or worse than anybody else's suffering, and to give her that strength is just amazing.
Well, and he also said pretty much in the same breath, the women don't have to be unhappy forever.
Yeah. Yeah. He said, I think these women have an unimaginable strength, and that they can use this strength to create change.
Mm-hmm. And what's the I'm trying to come up with the right word, and I'm searching. I'm sorry. Basically, the thing that they say about the City of Joy: transform pain into power.
Yes. Yeah. So one of the end parts of the credits said that they 180 women a year graduate from their program, and of course it's a 6-month program, so that means about 90 women per class. But I did the math the other way and said 180 women a year. That means they have one woman come to them every 2 days, and those are just the women that survive, that seek help, and receive help.
Those are just the women that go into the leadership program at City of Joy. Those are not the women that they see who are coming to the hospital at Ponzi.
Right.
I mean, do the math backwards, right? So this movie was made in 2016. So at that point, Dr. Mukegwe had been a doctor for 33 years, and he said that he had treated over 40,000 women. That's 1,000 women a year. That's a little over 1,000 women a year.
It's a little over 3 a day.
Those are the women that, as you said, survive, seek help. Those are women that are found, like Jane, who actually, someone said there's a chopper looking for people who are suffering like you, who then had someone who was willing to pack her out on his back to the helicopter.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, I mean, it's chilling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, girl, I think I'm talked out. I mean, this movie was wonderful. It was heartbreaking. It ripped my heart out. It gave me hope. I'm so glad that we watched it. I'm so glad. I don't even remember where I saw it. It was something that had gotten shared on Facebook, and I follow a couple of different pages like The Mighty Girl and the John Randall Peace page. So there are a couple of different places like that will share things like this. I'm not sure where I saw it.
Huh.
But I'm so glad that we watched this movie.
I know. I'm like, are we ever going to watch a documentary that we don't like?
Well, actually, I have to completely laugh that you say that, because I was basically like, so, pretty much we're picking movies that we're passionately interested in. Yeah. So are we ever going to pick a movie that we're not interested in? Or are we going to be like, okay, this movie, 0 stars, very bad, do not recommend.
Okay, but we actually have I had watched the documentary about Silicon Valley, about Facebook, the trouble with, or the problem with, or whatever. But neither of you or I had seen Hail Satan. And neither you or I had seen this. It was recommended to us, and we actually wound up liking it.
Oh,
I don't
my
know
God.
if it's just because I really like documentaries. So
I just, I got to tell you, Hail Satan, I'm so happy that we watched that movie. And we've spent all of this time talking about this incredibly sad and incredibly powerful movie. And I'm really, really glad. But yeah, I'm still so glad that we watched Hail Satan.
Same sort of thing, though. It is activism, It is, putting yourself out there and trying to make a difference, make a change.
And that's probably why we're so passionate about these movies. I mean, I don't think either one of us was quite as passionate about The Social Dilemma, although I think it's an important movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was another movie that kind of crossed my brain today that I thought we should watch, and of course I lost it. I'm trying to keep a list of things.
Well, you did mention the one that I think Todd had mentioned to you.
Oh, well, so I shared the links for it. The Totally in Control. Totally Under Control.
Totally in Control documentary, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you just type in TOT to Google, it, like, at least for my algorithm, it auto-completes.
Oh, that's funny. All right, so I found the link about Dr. Mukegwe, and I don't know who I shared it from because it's got a name attached to it that I don't recommend, or that I don't recognize. So one of my friends shared it, and then I reshared it and said, "Hey, Marn, you and I should watch this." So I'm not sure who shared it, but boy, if that person is here, if that person is listening, I'm so grateful to you for sharing that so that I could watch this movie and get some hope.
Yeah. Agreed. I like I said, I'm apprehensive about the subject matter, but I really, really appreciated the documentary.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot that I would like to know more about. But that's all that I have.
I still think you need to catapult Hotel Rwanda to the top of your list.
I'll see if it's on Netflix. I am actually currently watching some Walking Dead related fluff. I'm watching The Arrangement.
Oh, that Christine Evangelista was in.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I really like it. It was actually on the E channel, so the entertainment E Hollywood whatever channel. So it's really just like Hollywood kind of fluff, but it's good.
I keep like making this promise to myself that I'm going to watch all of this superfluous stuff, and I just don't. And even stuff that I don't consider superfluous, like I really want to finish The Boys. I really want to finish the first season of Lovecraft Country. I still haven't finished it.
You have to watch The Boys because we're going to podcast it with Phil.
I know, right? So I guess that is going to be one of our non-documentary social commentary things that we do for The Real Housewives.
Yep.
Although Phil still hasn't listened to any of our episodes because he's still waiting for iTunes to get it together and get us up on iTunes.
Yeah, it's a little hard to listen to on the other platform that it's on right now, which I can't remember.
Libsyn, which is that's
yeah.
like the hosting product that SMG uses.
Yeah, so we have links to that, but it's one of those things that I think if you pause, it doesn't actually pause. If you pause it, like you have to remember you were 36 minutes in and go back to 36 minutes, or then figure out you were 36 minutes in, which is annoying.
Yeah, I'm glad that we at least are getting published somehow and that we're able to share it. And I have had some friends listen to it, so that's been fun.
I think it was Phil that said that there's probably everyone and their brother is starting a podcast right now, so Apple's a little busy. I get it, but you know what? We are no spring chickens.
We are the Real Housewives of Alaska.
Yeah, like we're biters, so we need preferential treatment. First world problems.
First world problems. All right. So, boy, we're headed into some perilous times. Watch out for the weirdos.
Yeah, we are the weirdos, mister.
We are the weirdos, mister.
Oh, man, I don't think this is going to be up before Tuesday, but please, everyone, go vote.
It's not going to be
already.
It's not going to be up on Apple before Tuesday at the rate Apple's going, but I will probably have it published on the Libsyn platform before Tuesday.
I have a lot of friends who are on the opposite end of the spectrum politically as me. I'm still Facebook friends with them. I'm not really on Facebook much, so that's okay. But your voice is heard when you vote, so go do it.
Yeah, I mean, there truly are some people that, wow, I really don't want you to vote because you're going to cancel me out, but I want you to vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not, I guess, majority rules, but it does matter. And it matters more this year than any other year, I think.
It's what we say every 4 years, but this year it feels really real.
I know. Like, what's going to happen? Like, in 4 years from right now, like, are we going to be saying the same thing? Like, at least one side of us is, right?
Right.
If we still have a voice. Yeah. So, all right, everybody. Have a good week. Go vote.
Yes.
Wash your hands. Wear your mask.
Be respectful of others. Please. We're having a COVID surge in this country right now. Please wash your hands. Social distance. Put your mask on. It covers your nose.
Follow the 7 tenets. Spooky Chef. God, that's a callback.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think Brian listens to this podcast. I don't think it's his.
No.
Don't think it would be up his alley.
But I put it out there in the universe. So that's my sign off. Have a good week, everybody.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Take your pride and don't